So, hello everyone. I can start seeing that our attendees are coming through at the moment. So, welcome to our webinar today, our 5 steps to unlock the true potential of your Laravel digital ecosystem. I know we're going to be joined by people all over the world. So, good morning or good afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. So I'm Dan, I'm going to be your host for today. I'm also joined by Sylvan, who will be doing our talk, which we'll be getting onto just in a second. But just before we get into that, I've got a few little bits of housekeeping to go through, and hopefully this also just gives everyone a time who hasn't joined quite yet to get here before the talk itself starts. So just the first thing to say, we are focusing on the Laravel framework today, and I'm sure most people who are joining us are either Laravel website owners or developers. But if you're not, please do stick around. I think you'll find very quickly when Sylvan starts to discuss the different insights that actually is very relevant, regardless of what framework, CMS or platform that you're using. His talk today is going to be about 35 to 40 minutes. And then afterwards, we'll be sticking around to answer any kind of questions that you might have. So if you do want to ask any questions at any point during the session, if you just scroll down to the bottom of your Zoom window, you should see a little Q&A button. You click on that, the Q&A window will pop up. And yeah, we'll get around to those after the talk. If you have any questions after the session, we'll be providing our contact details at the end of the webinar, but you can also reach us out on Twitter using the hashtag LaraDuck. And then just some accessibility information to provide. So firstly, we are providing captions. If these are not already turned on for you and you require them, again, if you look at the bottom of your Zoom window, you should see a transcription button. And if you click on that, you should be able to open up captions. You'll also see that we're being joined by Nikki and Rachel, who'll be providing BSL throughout the session. Again, if you need to pin them, you scroll over there to window, you'll see 3 little dots. If you click on those, you'll see pin. But everyone should be hopefully seeing this at the moment in gallery view. So what you should be seeing is throughout the session and dropping in and out as they switch over. So that's everything in terms of housekeeping. I think it's now a perfect time to pass over to Sylvan with a good amount of people joined, and we'll get ready on the talk today. So hello, Sylvan.
Hello, Dan. Thank you. Thank you for the intro. So I just want to start by painting you a picture of a product team, and they're 1 year into building a Laravel application. And no matter what your job role is in the projects, you might identify with a few of them. Starting as a junior developer, have you ever tried to resolve a bug in a Laravel application and felt like this? Or as a new developer or as an existing team member, have you welcomed a new developer or product manager in your team? And that new person is asking to get some onboarding documentation to be brought up to speed on where the project is and what we're actually doing. Or as a senior developer, have you ever tested a pull request from one of your colleagues and they tell you, but it worked on my machine, I don't understand. As a QA manager, have you ever been asked to rush a deployment for a critical issue that must go live today, instead of doing things properly and doing a full regression testing before going live? As a technical lead, have you ever received new requirements from a client for a new feature, a new user story, and felt like that? And as a product manager, have you ever attended a sprint retrospective and asked why something was not completed on time or as per the specification on the acceptance criteria? And finally, as a marketing director, do you always make a plan to release the next big feature in your next quarter and end up like that when you talk about your development team? Does that sound familiar? Does that describe some of your colleagues in your team or even yourself? You recognize yourself in any of those? Well, don't worry, my 4-year-old daughter's favorite cartoon can come to the rescue, and I have a diagnosis. It's called the Laravel inefficiencies. The symptoms and conditions are more common than you think, so you're not alone, don't worry. It's happening to a lot of our clients. We've recently and over the years, we've taken over existing Laravel application from incumbent partners. And we always start with a full audit of retrieving the source code, setting it up on our machine, reviewing the infrastructure. Obviously, we always find some areas for improvement. But more importantly, when we try to expand on the wider process of those projects, we start looking at the product vision coming from the top, or we analyze how the business requirements get to the developer, the various communication streams and the agile process and so on. And in all cases, we find that there is some common patterns with all those issues, and it's not a single person's responsibility. It's not just the product manager's fault or the developer's inefficiency that is responsible for that, because it really requires a team effort. We need to work through the entire chain of command and review the whole process end to end as one team. This is why today I want to analyze those symptoms in more detail, and I will share with you some of our experience and how we can all do better by working together and trying to find a cure for this. So what is blocking the true potential of your Laravel application? What's the problem we're here trying to solve? I usually start with a loss of trust between the team members or across different teams from the business and technology, for example. Also comes with unreliable application where the developer is worried about the next line of code that's going to be deployed, or the marketers dreading the next release. And all of that leads to an inefficient delivery throughout, and very little value being delivered to the end users and to the stakeholders. And all of that then gets worsened by becoming kind of dysfunctional teams when you don't trust each other, when you don't communicate. It's just making everything worse. And if you're rushing to do always the most next important feature, there's not enough planning to do not only the right thing, but also do the things right. So how do we do better? What are the goals and what is the main objective of trying to cure this condition on your project? Obviously, every project is very different. Every team has different skills level, different experience, and the budget of each project can vary in terms of investment and timeline. So it's very hard to pinpoint a single item. But overall, what we're going to try to explore today is how we can do better by improving communication on how everything and everyone works together between users and throughout the process. And the main goal to rebuild the trust would be very important, because as we've seen, that's usually what's lacking. It always starts with some frustration in one of the team or some team members, either in the leadership, in the business or technology team. And someone decided that enough is enough. We need to bring an external agency like CyberDusk to come and help us to rescue the project. And we will rebuild trust by starting to deliver value. As I said, that's one main thing, that when there's no value and the business tries to take a new direction, it's because they don't see the return on their investment. So it's going to be a key focus, obviously, on trying to bring that back. And once we see the value being added, which can take a while if there is a lot to untangle, we'll be in a better position to start delivering cleaner code and tested codes that will then make everything easier to manage. And only then can we start reviewing the budgets and optimize it, which is not always music to the CFO's ears, as the business or some of our clients feel like they've already paid for those features and they don't understand why it needs to be redone, or they feel like they're paying for the same thing again. At the end of the day, we have to do it for the end users, because if the stakeholders see the value and the growth in the product, if the customers and paying users are engaging with your site and the product, then everyone will be happy. And that's the main goal here, trying to bring everyone and realign everything. So don't worry, there is a cure for this Laravel inefficiencies disease, and the treatment requires 5 steps. The first one would be to align the vision. Second one would be to look at the delivery process and how to optimize all of that. We'll then move on to the upgrade strategy of your Laravel application. We'll look at the security of the environment and the hosting infrastructure and the code. And finally, we'll go through the continual improvements and how we can always do better, and it's never really over. So let's go through them one by one now in more details. Starting by aligning the vision. So the challenge here is that every piece of software, every project, every business idea always starts with some good intention. Someone identifies a real need, and they want to use software to try and solve that challenge or provide solution to the market. But over time, the product strategy is always evolving. There's always a lot of factors influencing the direction and the priorities. Whether it comes from customers' expectation that are changing or evolving over time, or internal changes in your team with a new CEO trying to bring new requirements or going into a new direction, or new opportunities from the sales team requiring some custom features to be built very urgently, or even external regulation from government or external entities that forces you to change some of the features of your application. And over time, the complexity always increases, not just in terms of the number of lines in the code or the complexity of the software and the feature, but also the decision-making and the impact that each feature adds to an existing application. So what we've identified, again, through our 17 years of experience now doing those type of projects, is that most of the time it's lacking a unified product vision. Not just for the product itself, but for the entire team. So we have, again, follow the basic product management principles and really trying to align everyone. The second item that's usually lacking is a lack of validation of the requirements. How do you prioritize new feature? How do you make sure it really answers the customer needs? Are you trying to do too much, too quick? And third is the misalignment between the team, between usually the business side and the technology side. There's a lack of understanding of the dependencies of how a new feature might impact the user experience, or existing technical limitation, or how maybe an API is not enabled to deliver that new feature. So one of the main challenge here between business and tech is to find a balance between the short-term goals and the urgent features that need to be built, versus the long term, again, back to this product vision. What is the long term? What are we trying to achieve? Where are we going? So earlier this week, I asked Brendan, our lead product person at Cyberduck, about his experience and some of those challenges around software projects and how to align everyone. So let's listen to what he has to say.
Why does software development fail? Lots of reasons, but often it comes down to poor planning, even before a project has started. A poor understanding of what needs to be done, and poor scoping of the project or the contracts can lead to poor procurement and onwards from there, a poor project. But not putting the user at the heart of the project and really having the user needs at the DNA of what the software solution is trying to do often is going to lead to failure. Defining a project roadmap and what should be in the product roadmap in terms of priorities, I find that it's got to be user need led. You've got to understand what the minimum viable product is. And then external factors and business requirements, as they change over time, that's fine. They can wrap around the user needs and they can evolve. In terms of aligning a business vision to the technology that you're trying to create, it's really down to the product owner. A product owner needs to put in place an understanding of the user and the user needs, put them at the heart of what they're doing, and then show how the business vision is going to meet the needs of the users and how the technology then needs to enable it to all happen. Simple as.
Simple as, yeah, some wise words from Brendan here. So yeah, in terms of our recommended treatment then to align the vision, align everyone around the common vision, as Brendan said, is to put someone in charge, hire a technical product owner who loves UX more than just technical skills. It's really about embedding US best practices and engaging the users. It's also, I find often that what helps is to let the developers and the technical team listen and be involved in those early stages of product definition or user research. Let your developers listen to some of the user interviews of focus groups, so they have a better feel for what they have to build. So they don't just read acceptance criteria on a ticket, they hear it right from the users who are going to interact with the piece of software. So every decision has to be centered around the end users, and obviously the customer being always king, but you also must not forget your team, the impact that those process and that vision can have on your team, because you need a happy team that is aligned to the common goal to deliver a good product. The second treatment would be to enforce governance, make sure the product person and the team really make sure the business and the technology team collaborate better and listen to each other. And from what we've seen in the last few years, I would say that the business needs to listen to the tech. It's usually more often in that direction. And I'm not saying that because I'm an ex-developer. It needs to be both ways, but I still hear a lot of the time CEOs or CMOs complaining about their tech team and their inability to deliver X or Y, or things taking longer. And what we've seen is that sometimes, or most of the time, they're not listening to the feedback coming from the tech team. So it's crucial for the technology team to be involved in the product vision upstreams at the time where key decisions are made around new feature or potential pivots, and they can raise new risks, not just about the user, but about the impact on the technology platform before those key decisions are made. And I would say the technology team also has the responsibility to be honest and transparent about the longer term challenges. And we're going to see that in the next section, but they need to be aware of the risk. And the only way to build back that trust would be to be fully transparent around the velocity of the delivery, about what the tech team can realistically achieve in each sprint, and really take ownership for the commitment that the tech team is making. So once you have a clear vision and an understanding of the user needs, you can start looking at how those requirements trickle down from the top to the delivery team of designers, developers, and QA engineers. As we've seen in the previous section, if the business and the tech are not aligned, they will not communicate on the same level, and there'll be huge misunderstandings. Might end up with a situation where the sales team make commitment or promise to the customer that the tech team simply cannot deliver on time or as per what was discussed in a pitch meeting. And there's sometimes a lack of visibility on the roadmap as well that make things worse when the business decides to build new partnership or scale into a new area or go global or pivot to other industries. It can often lead to conflicting priorities, similar to what we discussed earlier about the short-term goals versus the long-term vision. There need to be some alignment in that, because you need to be able to deliver on both fronts. And the trust factor might come into play again if over time the velocity of the releases are slowing down, if the quality of the software is not as expected, if there are too many bugs or rollbacks on every release. You will have disgruntled stakeholders and disgruntled customers. So it's really critical to get the delivery process right. When it comes to delivery, again, we need the business and the tech team to speak the same language. Some here have heard a client a few months ago saying, "Oh yeah, this little change there, it's tiny. I've done it in my Excel formula here in 5 minutes, so should be able to get it live tomorrow, right?" And as we know, it's never that simple. You need to plan all the little dependencies, all the edge cases, what happens if something goes wrong. So when something is not delivered, it's not always the developer's fault. We need to look at the requirement. Did the requirement get distilled in the right formats? Did we spend enough time looking at all of those edge cases, as I mentioned? And you really need to have a strong feedback loop between the team before any line of code is written. And then we'll come to prioritization, not just prioritization of the new feature, like Brendan spoke about in the previous section, but also thinking about the maintenance task, because the business will always push for new features. There's always going to be new requirements, a new campaign launching soon, and urgent things to be developed. But there's never enough time to focus on the quality and the basic hygiene of the basic maintenance of the application. And we'll talk about technical debt in the next section, but it's really about prioritizing the maintenance task as well as the new feature that needs to be built. And as the team size grows over time, so does the software complexity, because even if you follow code standards, even if you have the right process on your technical side with pull requests and developers pairing and reviewing each other's code, the more developers you add, the less consistency you will end up with. Everyone has their own personal preferences and might decide to start changing ways of coding or the patterns. And when you have staff turnaround in your team as well, it could set everyone back when you have to onboard and retrain, and having a new team member, they have to relearn past decision, and all of that is can be really damaging for your digital ecosystem. So an effort and a focus on team retention is something that is usually lacking too from our experience. The recommended treatment here will be, as Brendan said, to follow agile delivery and bring stronger collaboration. So yes, agile is not a silver bullet. It does not work for all businesses. It doesn't work in all teams. But we can take a pragmatic approach just by enforcing a specific process to prioritize the feature, make sure the requirements are gathered and validated, and the way to manage your backlog to enable more transparency across the team, and sticking to requirements once they're in, once the team made a commitment and the sprint starts, let the team focus on the delivery and stop changing the priorities halfway through the sprint. And we talked about delivering value. And that does not mean having to rush things. Even agile sometimes can be misunderstood as, yeah, we'll deliver quick in the next 2 weeks and then we'll worry about the adjustment later. Just need to get the MVP live. Well, that's not going to work on large corporate projects. You really need to spend more time planning. So that's why we always strongly encourage team to take a breath, take time to plan, do the sprints and the backlog grooming and the sprint planning outside of the sprint time, where the team is focusing on the delivery, and just allow enough time for all of that to plan the architecture, to plan the database diagram, and all the technical dependencies. And then the recommendation would be to document as you go, documenting the flows of control at the UX stage during discovery early on, the different flow charts of user journeys, and annotating those with technical requirement as early as possible. Because when you document that business logic on paper, on a Miro board, or whatever tool you use, it will really help bring clarity to everyone. Everyone will understand the scope, that this is what we will end up with, even if it's hard to visualize. If it's not in your browser that you can click, you can follow the steps of the user journey and understand the different API calls and the requirement at each step. So that will help firm the requirements between the business and the tech. And will also help onboard new team members. So there's just so many benefits to having good documentation that it's really a must-have. So once you have a clear vision and then a smooth delivery process, you can start digging deeper into the tech and the Laravel upgrade strategy. So reflecting on some of the challenges in that space, obviously open source is great. We all love it. We promote it all the time, and do feel that, truly believe that it's the best solution in most use cases. However, the main drawback of open source is the upgrade requirements, because by going open source, you basically save on license fee. Yes, you don't have to pay a license fee to a provider, but you do need to invest some of that budget in refactoring and patching and upgrades. It becomes your responsibility. One of the best things about Laravel is that the core is stable. There's predictable yearly releases. It's a very mature framework. And the challenge comes more with external packages, where you basically not trying to reinvent the wheels every time and bring external packages to your core project. And those external packages managed by the community might not be maintained or upgraded. We're going through it now for a few of our clients where we're maintaining the application and have to upgrade to PHP 8 before November, end of life. But so the core is going very well and smoothly, but some of those external packages are no longer maintained. So we have to either find replacement or rewrite them, which adds more work. And the second challenge comes with software decay. By definition, software decay or software entropy is when the quality of the software deteriorates over time, and it will eventually lead to the software becoming faulty or unusable or in need of an upgrade. It's not a physical phenomenon. The software does not actually decay. If you let it run on the server, it will run. But if it's not being updated with the changing environment, the changing business logic, the evolving technology, the underlying platform running it, if you just leave the code untouched like that, yes, it will run, but next time you want to change something, it will not be up to the standards anymore. It might not be secure and might not be the best way of doing things. So improving the code quality for older software is time consuming, but the more you wait, the worse it's going to get. Basically, it compounds over time, and it will require even more effort and more budget and longer timeline later. And one of the challenges is that the business stakeholders or the marketers, they see no value, they have no clue about it, and they don't see any new feature. It doesn't change. For them, it's exactly the same thing, and they don't understand why they need to spend some time and money and budget on that. And despite my best efforts of explaining it to clients and doing YouTube videos or writing blogs about it, some of them still don't get it. So it's always going to be a challenge. The last threat that comes with software architecture is that there is no right or wrong answer. There's no perfect solution. There's no one size fits all. Yes, you can follow best practices around keeping things organized and your code in folders and namespaces, but there's always going to be debate about whether microservices or monolithic architecture are better. And the truth is that there is no right or wrong. They all have pros and cons, and the business needs to work with the tech to understand the risks, the dependencies, and make a collaborative decision. So let's be fair. The biggest thing that is usually lacking on the technical side of this project is a lack of confidence in the app, and usually due to the lack of automated tests, because this will completely kill the reliability of the app and the trust that everyone has in it. Not just for the dev who's worried about the line of code that they need to write, but also down the tester and the quality assurance team who has to do full regression manually every time there is a little change being made. Or again, the marketer who's dreading the next deployment and pray for something not to go wrong. Some of the symptoms also include a lack of understanding of how the requirement of a new feature can impact something that's already in place. So when we learn about something new, about the feature, it usually make more sense. So there's sometimes a case to make some updates or upgrade the base feature first that was already in place. So it's easier and more stable and more scalable to add that new feature that needs to come in next. So it's not about building the new thing or just putting the next Lego piece on top of it. Sometimes you need to refactor the base to have a more stable foundation. And next, you might also be lacking alignment in your tech team. As I said, when you have multiple developers working on it, you really need a strong technical lead to make decisions, to take time to document everything and align the database structure and write the documentation, write the test, and really enforce that process throughout the teams and over time as well to ensure consistency. And obviously, things can evolve as the business requirement changes or your application needs to scale. Some decision might need to be made differently, and that's fine as long as there is a clear alignment in the tech team. And another thing we've seen and we've discussed with my colleague recently is a lack of data. And I know it's not always easy to track, but when we ask clients, they don't really have clear answers about when they say, oh, things are too slow, or the release are slowing down and the velocity is slowing down. there's no real measurement to that, and we don't really can always track the impact of it. So as I said, we need to find ways to measure the velocity of the sprint, the time it takes to patch, to upgrade, the time it takes to deploy a new feature, like from the requirements coming in to it being deployed. And it's not always measurement of time or performance, but another one could be to measure your team happiness. How satisfied is your team of developers working on the application? Because again, that will have a big impact on the quality of the end product. So in terms of the recommended treatment, there's 3 simple steps, really. The first one is, as I said, to invest enough time and budget for the refactoring. We recommend up to 20-25% of your team capacity and space in your backlog for basic maintenance. So yes, it takes a bit more time and a bit more money to develop new features, but really there is no shortcut. It's a must-have. Second, as we've seen, is that Laravel is well optimized for fixed cycle and the release schedule. So that needs to be planned well in advance. So when a new feature comes in, it's not just about estimating the time it takes to add the line of code to enable that feature, but what else do we need to refactor, or what is the opportunity if we need to touch in that specific module for the next sprint? What is the priority? What is the main issue in that module that we should refactor as we're working on it now to make it better for the future and more scalable and better tested? So again, all of that needs to be planned into the estimates before sprint starts. And last, you just need to enforce the software delivery process best practices, from enabling pull requests and having developers reviewing codes of each other, and all the automation that DEVOPS can bring. And we have another webinar, we'll share the links at the end, about how to enable DEVOPS and culture in your team and all the benefits it can bring. So it's definitely something that can be trained, that we can coach your team about, and put new processes and systems in place that once they're embedded into your process, you can let your team run with it, and you should see improvements straight away. So once you have a clear vision, robust delivery, good code maintenance and upgrade strategy, it's time to secure your Laravel ecosystem. As we all know, it's a growing concern from everywhere, from the general public being more aware of hacking events, and the regulation and countries finally catching up on this big tech and how the personal data needs to be protected. And no one is immune. Tech is evolving very fast, and seems like the hackers are always one step ahead. No one is really immune. Even, well, a few years ago, if Twitter and Facebook can get hacked when they have developers paid $1 million a year, how can it not be a risk to us? We're like minions compared to them with our budget. Even at corporate projects or small startup, security is a big risk, and no one is immune. And you can have the best IT team with information security experts. They might have a thesis on cloud security, but how do you ensure that there is no weak link in your team? Just be a moment of distraction by a senior developer can open the vulnerability, or a junior marketing intern who can type the password in the wrong place and open a backdoor to the entire system of your admin area. And finally, the ad hoc pen testing. That's something that's no longer suitable because they're already outdated by the time they're published. And we'll talk a bit more about that next. So what we find is usually lacking here is training, really training on your team and thinking about where could be our weakest link and what does our team need? How can we upgrade their skills and their understanding to avoid those potential issues? Because without training, it just leads to a diminished culture around security in the entire team and the entire business usually. If it's not at the forefront of the strategy, if no one speaks about it, if it's never raised in sprint planning, then it will almost like be taboo, like no one speaks about it, and yeah, fine, there's no problem. Let's continue as is. And then some companies still see that as a second priority. As I said, it's much less common. There's a much better awareness of everyone, and most clients get it and they understand the need to invest in that. But we still see sometime having to rush things, like this focus of maybe lack of planning or not enough vision about what's coming next in the next sprint or in the next quarter. Still need to rush things out, rush a feature that has to be delivered, and we just feel safe because they had the pen test done 2 weeks ago. So yeah, we can just add this small new feature and we'll worry about the pen test on the next release. And again, if the test is not, the code and the release is not tested for every single edge case, and if there's not enough code reviews focusing on security, it's just opening more risks for not enough good reasons, in my opinion. So bringing in an external expert again, we've asked our partners at CovertSwarm for their views, and this is what they had to share with us. The first one, the core aspect of software development lifecycle is really about having a focus on security throughout the process, from the design, the planning, and the actual development. Because if you leave security as an afterthought, just like let's have a pen test before it goes live, can be costly to remediate later and having to change things. And if you're not compliant to any relevant regulation or as a result of a potential compromise, you will feel the pain, both financially to recover and through negative PR as well, if you have data being leaked, for example. And then when it comes to the development, as I've mentioned, it's very important to train and bring awareness of the secure development principles to your entire team, just to reduce the number of vulnerabilities being introduced throughout the process. Because again, it's a lot cheaper to get it right first time than trying to fix it afterwards. A common example of for the developers amongst us is when you insert new users in your database, you have thousands of users registering, and you just take the next incremental ID in the database with 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in the future, security best practices might recommend to assign unique IDs and random strings for those identifiers. And that can be very costly if you need to refactor your entire authentication system and everything linked around users needs to be updated. That will require a lot of time and effort. So educate your employees early about best practice on security. And then the last point is really to forget about ad hoc penetration tests, as I mentioned earlier. You really need to have take security as a continuous effort. You need a view of your security postures at all time, not just when the release is happening, but it's almost 24/7. It's not just a cyber snapshot of a limited scope at a moment in time. And that's why CyberDuck with CovertSwarm, our partners at CovertSwarm, what the service we're offering is to constantly seek to breach the organization by exploiting the latest vulnerabilities or finding compromise. So it's like open field, and let us try to breach you. Basically, that's the only way to outpace the genuine cyber threats is by having us break in first and letting you know about things that you can resolve before the hackers find it. So the fifth and final point is going to be on continual improvement. So the challenge here again is that the delivery teams are constantly sprinting, like heads down, BAU, let's continue to deliver. There's like urgent bugs and long backlog that needs to be done. And changes is hard. It's hard to step back and look at it from the outside and see what the problem might be. And that's when consultants like us from the outside can come in and paint a more realistic picture. Second challenge is the domain knowledge, which it's hard to keep and hard to share, as we've seen, either the lack of documentation or the staff turnaround on the business side, the technology, and the client side. It's a challenge for everyone. Knowledge management is key in any business. And the concept of continual improvement is that it's never over. It's never done. And that can be challenging sometimes because you know in the back of your mind that there's always something that can go wrong, and the team motivation might fluctuate over time, knowing. But I think that it's really a mindset that we can always do better and we'll all come better out of it. So let's work together to make that happen. And what we've seen usually lacking is that as I said, you head down, you're too involved in your own ways, and then it just blows up at one time, and it's usually too late and too far down the line, or too many bad decisions have been taken, the trust is lost, and then it's more costly to repair and more time consuming. Another thing we see as well, and we try to educate clients and business people and product owners to come with us with the challenge rather than solution. You might see a lot of features coming in saying, I want you to implement it exactly like that. Like, I want you to implement this new feature that way. And that's how we want it. That's our acceptance criteria. Rather than coming to us with a challenge saying, hey, our user need to achieve that goal. And then we come in together, collaborate with UX, collaborate with QA, collaborate with the product team and marketers, and come with a better solution where the technical team has input on the pros and cons of its solution. As we said, centralized knowledge sharing. Whether you have, we've seen from clients, a senior developer leaving and just taking another contract and everything is dumped as is, like, just deal with it, just figure it out. We don't have any more information. So again, having centralized knowledge sharing is very important and usually lacking in most businesses. So again, I will ask opinion of Danny here, our CEO, about continual improvement and in software projects. So let's see what he has to say.
Product alignment is key to success. Where stakeholders do not gel or there's tensions between them, there is a massive risk. It's important to have a manifesto that everybody signs up to and people commit to clear KPIs and OKRs. I'd recommend recurring weekly 30-minute meetings with advanced agendas that happen regularly with frequent strategic and tactical updates. During these sessions, people must confirm in writing the outputs and agree live on screen during the meeting what the actions are and what the outputs are. And then this needs to be documented and evidenced in a place where everybody can find that information.
Yeah, so again, here summarizing everything on the continual improvement is really, there's so much data from decision being made, requirements from discovery, from user research, all the way to technical decisions and diagram and flowcharts. Really make sure you document as you go and update it over time as well. As things change, you need to record those decisions of what has changed and the reason why. Second one is to focus on team retention and ask your team, involve them early on the process, ask them for feedback at the end, and trust them to make the right decisions. And then it's, as we said, it's never perfect. We can always do better. So make sure you run sprint retrospective, collaborate with everyone, and learn from those retros and do better together as one team. So to conclude, wherever you are up the chain, we can all do better. We can all improve the communication. We can all embrace best practices of automation around automated test and penetration test and DEVOPS. Just remove those headaches and risks early on and let the team focus on adding value. Invest in doing things properly, as we've seen, that yes, it might slow you down early, but you will have a stronger base and really unlock the true potential of your Laravel application. And finally, focus on end users and stakeholders and your co-workers, your own team. Because if you keep everyone happy and working better together, it will always deliver the true value of your software and application. So that's it for today. Tell me what is the main thing you took out and what lesson you've learned and how you're going to start applying that in when you get back to work tomorrow morning. Right. So yeah, hope you enjoyed everything. Again, feel free to reach out. It was really fun to present all of that. And yeah, if you have any question, feel free to reach me by email, on Twitter, LinkedIn, our websites, YouTube channel. There's a lot of resources everywhere. So yeah, let us know how we can help, and I'll pass that back over to Dan.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for that, Sylvan. That was amazing. I really hope everyone who joined us today enjoyed it. I know that we've had quite a few people who have joined who haven't been to one of our webinars in the past. So thank you so much. I really hope you took a lot away from it. Just a quick overview of us as an agency. So yes, we're a digital transformation agency. We kind of work on web platforms to redesign and rebuild them with a real kind of focus on accessibility, user friendliness, usability, and serving users better with technology such as Drupal and Laravel. And we also help to ensure that our clients have their data and their website secure and compliant through better UX, SEO, and DEVOPS. And you just see at the bottom a few of the kind of clients that we've been working on, so NHS, Bosch, Sport England, Cadbury's, Compare the Market. Some really kind of fantastic projects there as well. So also check out our case studies. There's some amazing stories for both Laravel and Drupal of late as well. If you are looking for a new job, we are actually on the lookout at the moment as well, particularly for a Laravel developer as well as a UX designer. So if you just pop into our careers page, you'll kind of see a few of the roles that we are actively seeking for. But you know, we always want to talk to new talent out there, talk to new people, get an idea of who are the great new people in tech. So just drop us your details as well. If the right role isn't up there, you know, we'll get back to you. And if you are an organization with any kind of Laravel website or digital ecosystem challenges, we'd love to have a virtual coffee. So again, please feel free to drop us an email or get us at social media, or check out any of our other resources available across the internet. So as Sylvain mentioned, we've got a lot out there. We have Sylvain's own YouTube channel. We have our own podcast. Our last podcast was actually with CovertSwarm's founder and CEO, Anders Reeves. It's a really amazing conversation around ethical hacking in there. And again, a great resource I think everyone here should download is our DevOps white paper. So I'll just dropped into the chat a link to that, and I'll also share a link to the webinar we ran a while back around DevOps. And I think with that, we can get onto the Q&A section. So we've got a couple in, but again, if you have anything to ask Sylvain, start dropping it in now. But I think a good one to really start with is, how can I convince senior stakeholders to invest in upgrading to the latest version of Laravel?
Yeah, that's a good one. How to convince the stakeholders? I think there's almost like there's no alternative really. The main thing would be around security. I think that's the leading argument there, because if you're using open source technology, as I mentioned, you do need to upgrade. Every piece of software will have what's called end of life, where things are no longer supported. So Laravel started in version 3 and now we're in version 9, and some with Drupal 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 coming soon. So there's always going to be new releases, new feature being updated, and the old framework will no longer be supported. So if you're not upgrading, you're just going to open up huge security risk of being hacked. Basically, that's the main risk, and losing customer data is no longer an option these days. Can ruin your entire business and brand. So I think that's the security argument would be where I would be leading that, if to convince the CEO to release extra budget. Then obviously there are other factors, such as following the best practices and being a bit more efficient, and kind of new features available in the latest version of PHP or the Laravel framework. That might help a bit with the efficiency, but it's going to be less relevant for the top execs, I think.
Are there any kind of good resources that our audience could use to stay on top of the kind of, I guess, latest versions that are coming out, or any of the news coming out from Laravel?
Yeah, there's a few newsletters, Laravel Daily is one I know, and yeah, we can share a few others. But it's about, as I said, embedding a security culture in your team would mean that some people who are kind of leading on that theme would be following the various blogs. There are like newsletters and mailing lists. I know, both on PHP, Laravel, Drupal, there's like security specific mailing list where you can get notified of the latest security patches, and that as soon as they're released. So you can plan to fix in your release schedule and brief your team to prioritize those in the next iteration. So there's a lot of resources, and then external training as well. Companies like us can educate your team, or ethical hackers like CovertSwarm can bring additional knowledge, or by running those reports, they would, or those ethical hack would then produce reports about the vulnerabilities that they find. And we use those reports to educate the team. So next time they don't make the same mistake and they learn from it. So yeah, it really needs to come from the entire team.
That's great. I've one other question here that I think kind of links to that quite well, which is, what are some of the key ways to upskill my team internally when it comes to cybersecurity and protecting my organization against potential cyber attacks?
Yeah, I think doing a very strict audit or very thorough audits early on. So when we come in a new organization, that's one of the first things we'll say, like review not just the code best practices, but review the security. So run very thorough penetration tests on the code and the application, the hosting infrastructure, and then come back with the report. That's usually an eye opener for teams, saying, "Oh, we're not aware that we had so many issues and vulnerabilities." So yeah, that would be the first starting point, and then it's just continual improvement and training, as we've discussed.
That's great. I think that's the only questions we have for today. So if you do have any ones that you want to ask us after the session, you can find our details just in the slide here. So our email, we are hello@cyber-duck.co.uk. Twitter, we're @cyberduck_UK, and then we're also on LinkedIn, company/cyber-duck. And as I said at the start, you can also use the hashtag LaraDuck to reach us as well. So I think with that, I'll just say thank you, Sylvain, for your talk today. Thank you, Nikki and Rachel, for providing us with VSL. And thank you everyone for joining us. We'll be sending an email out next week, which will have the full recording on it. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop us a message. And hopefully you can join us for one of our webinars in the future.